Hello and welcome to yet another session of Active Passive Voice. Today we are going to see how to change past tense into passive voice. So without taking much time, let's jump to the topic itself. Let's get started. Now till now we have learned that passive voice will always use helping verbs. So when we talk about past tense, the two helping verb options that are available of the verb be are was and were. Was will be used for singular subject and were will be used for plural. So today we are going to see different subtypes of past tenses and in various forms of sentences like affirmative, negative and interrogative. Let's see how to change active into passive voice. Now let's begin doing passive voice of past tense. Now whenever we talk of past tense, like I told you just now also, we have to use helping verb like was or were. So if in active voice the structure is subject and we use V2 form of the verb, it will change into V3 preceded by a helping verb was or were. Look at this sentence. He shot a bird. Let's mark subject. He. Shot is the V2 form of the verb and a bird is the object. So when we make it in passive voice, it will become a bird will be the new subject. Was is the helping verb that I'm going to use for past tense and passive, and shot is the V3 form of the verb followed by a preposition by, and him will be the new object. Now this is telling me the change in pronoun, like he will become him, she will become her, they will become them, we will become us. Let's go to the next sentence. We enjoyed the game. Again, let's mark this is subject. Enjoyed is the V2 form and the game is the object here. So again, when we are taking it in passive voice, we will interchange the position of subject and object and make it the game as the subject here. Was is again the helping verb that I'm going to use, and enjoyed is the V3 form of the verb in passive. By and us becomes the new object. Next, when we go to negative sentences, the active voice will always have the word did not. And did is a very magical word because did does not allow V2 form with itself, even though it's past. So whenever we have the word did, it will always carry its best friend. And the best friend is V1 form of the verb because it doesn't get along well with the V2 form. That was on the lighter side. Now let's move ahead. So subject, did not and V1. Now changing it in passive means that I have to replace this did not with was or were and then followed by a not and obviously V3 form of the verb. So let's start with the examples. She did not speak the truth. So she is the subject. Did not again tells us that it is in past, negative. Speak. Because I am using did here, so I use the V1 form of the verb and the truth is object. Let's interchange the positions here. The truth here will become subject. Was is the helping verb. Not because it's a negative sentence. Spoken is the V3 form of speak. By her, and her becomes the new object. Next, you did not help me. Now me becomes the object. Help is the V1 form of the verb here. Let's change this. Now me, which was object here, will become I as subject here. Was help is the helping verb. Not helped. Helped here will become V3. Because in passive I'm not going to use the word did. So with was or were, I'll use V3 form. By and you becomes the new object. Let's move to interrogative sentences. Now when we talk about interrogative sentences in active voice, we use the word like did for past. And this becomes the question word. But when this question changes into passive, I may use was or were depending on what my nearest subject is. Let's start. Did you eat my tiffin? So you here is the subject. Eat will be V1 form because I'm using did. My tiffin becomes the object here. Now let's change this. I will change the question word from did to was. And why I am using was here? Because my new subject in the sentence is a singular subject. Okay, so was my tiffin? Eaten is the V3 form. By you becomes the new object. And obviously a question mark because it is interrogative. Next, did you not beat him? Now let's analyze the sentence. This is the subject. This is a negative interrogative. So after the subject I have used not. Beat becomes V1 because I am using did. And him is the object here. So let's change this. Was, he becomes the new subject. Not beaten. Beaten becomes V3 form of beat. And by, you becomes the new object. Let's look at past continuous tense now. The word continuous reminds us that verb will be in ing form, that is present participle form. And whenever we use verb with ing, we use the helping verbs like was or were that we have already seen in continuous tenses of past tense. Now let's see how to change active into passive. Like we discussed earlier during present tenses also, that continuous tenses which have ing have a very good hint of adding a word being in the passive. So ing of the verb will correspond to being in passive. That's another way to remember. Now let's see here. He was making tea when I came. He is the subject here. Was making is the verb in past continuous. Tea becomes the object. Now whatever I have after this when I came, it is another clause added to this. But I am not worried about this part of the sentence. All I have to look here is the main subject and the verb in sentence. Now let's start changing this. This object will become subject here. Tea was being made. Now was is the helping verb that I'll use in passive voice. Why being? Because I am using it for continuous tenses. The verb in active voices with ing, and so I'll use being. And then the verb will become in its V3 form by him. Now this subject he will be changed to the object him here, and after that I will join this clause there as it is when I came. Next, he was writing letters. So he is the subject. Was writing is the verb in continuous form and letters is the object. Now when I change this position of object subject, letters will come first, but here letters is plural. So because it is plural, I am going to use the helping verb were, then being and V3 form of the verb by him, the new object. Next, now let's look at negative sentences. And for negative sentences, we will use the word not between helping and the main verb. So let's start. She was not watching TV. Now let's change the positions here. In passive, it will be TV as subject and was not being watched. So watched will be in the V3 form preceded by being and a negative word not. Before this, we have helping verb. And then by her is the new object. Now let's look at the next sentence. The judges weren't discussing. So the judges become the subject. Weren't discussing is the verb and the result is object. Now let's change it in passive voice and it will be the result as the new subject. Now here I am going to use the auxiliary verb was, not or wasn't. Why? Because the result here is singular. Wasn't being discussed, which is again in the third form, by the judges, which is the new object. Now let's see what to do with interrogatives. In past continuous, the interrogatives always start with the question word was or were. So these question words will come in the beginning of the sentence. So let's ignore these for a moment and let's move on to the rest of the sentence. And we have the police as the subject, chasing is the verb, and the thief is object. So now this one will change into passive voice and I will have was as the question word here. Why? Because the thief here is singular, whereas in active voice the police is taken as plural, and that is why I had the question word were. So change the helping verb according to the subject. Now, was the thief being chased, that's the V3 form, by the police. The police is the object. Next, was the leader not making false promises? Now here we have a negative interrogative. So false promises here is object and this becomes the verb. Now let's see. False promises again here when it becomes subject, it is plural. So with plural I will use helping verb were. And then were false promises not being made, which is in the V3 form, by the leader. And don't forget to put a question mark. So that's it in the past continuous tense. Let's move ahead. Now let's learn about past perfect tense. Past perfect will always use the helping verb had. And one good thing about this tense is that you are not worried about the singularity or plurality of the subject. For both, we are going to use just one had. And therefore, in passive voice, whenever we are changing, we will always add the word been with had, just as we did in present perfect tense also. So let's see here. They, which is the subject, had bribed. Also, one more thing to note here is with had or in perfect tenses, the verb will always be in V3 form. So we are also not bothered about changing the form of the verb. We can copy the verb as it is. So it is the verb here, then the clerk, which is the object. Now changing it in passive voice, it will be the clerk as a new subject had been bribed. Now if you see here again it is V3. As in active also it was V3 form. All we have done here is just added a new word been. That's it. And then by and then becomes the new object. We had already solved the sums. So we here becomes subject. Had solved becomes the V3 form in active voice and the sums is object. Let's change it in passive. The sums here become new subject. Had already been is a new word that I have added here. Solved again V3 form. By us becomes the new object, because here in active we have the pronoun we. It will change to us. Now let's see the negative. For negative we have to use the word not after had. He had never visited me before. So he becomes the subject here. Now instead of not I can also use never. That is also a negative word. So had never visited is the verb form here. Me is the object. Now what is before? Before is adverb. So when we take it in passive voice, we will attach this adverb after the verb. So in passive it will become I as the new subject. Had never been is the extra word that I am adding here. Visited is the V3 form and before is the same adverb that it was used here. By him becomes the new object. The next, Ravi had not purchased the book. Let's change it. The book had not been purchased by Ravi. Simple. Now let's move to interrogatives. When we talk about interrogatives in this tense, the question word will be had. Let's start. So these are the question words which we are going to keep aside. Let's see the sentence now. The government, which is the subject here, made a mistake. So made is already in V3 form and a mistake is object. Let's do this here. Had. I'm going to keep the question word as it is. So had a mistake, this is the new subject, been made by the government becomes the new object. Now let's do the last one. Had you not locked the door? So you here again is subject, not locked. It's negative interrogative. The door is object. Let's do it. Had the door not been locked by you? So that's how we change active into passive in past tenses. And with this, we also finished today's session. I hope you understood well how to change active into passive when it comes to past tense, what words to remember and what words give you a hint of the new words that are to be added in passive. We'll do future tense or passive with models in the next session. Till then, take very good care of yourself and see you soon.